Bad can mean ugly. Bad can mean, that somebody is morally bad or behaving badly, or it can, bad can mean anything. Bad can also mean sad. I'm feeling bad in that sense.
Exactly.
Same with good, right? So what happens in old day is that you can't say you're angry. You can't say you're jealous. You can't say you're irritated. All of those words will come from Bangla. So for you to be a human being, you still need Bangla. And because we are not just our identities, right? Like the label that we put on ourselves, we're not just that. We're everything else. We also have favorite music. We have favorite activities, sports, various things that we don't really associate with a specific language. So for us to be able to express all of our, let's say I'm into video games, for me to be able to express that side of myself, I will need vocabulary for video games that might not be available in Bangla. That's okay. I'll just go to a different language, get that vocabulary, and so we live in a world.
Assimilate that.
Yeah, we live in a world where we actually use way more languages than we actually speak. We are, enjoying content from countries whose languages we don't speak.
Absolutely.
Even within our country, we listen to Punjabi music. How many of us actually speak Punjabi?
Exactly.
We watch South Indian movies. How many of us are speaking any of those
languages?
I listen to, let's say, Bihu. Do I speak Assamese? Barely. So it does not, Urdu shairi. How many of us can actually construct a sentence in Urdu without fumbling, right? So we actually enjoy a lot of languages. We hear.
How many of us actually speak a lot of Urdu thinking it's Hindi?
Well, that's a different matter altogether. I'm talking about.
But I understand the entire assimilation without our conscious knowledge, knowing of it.
I know phrases from Gujarati, from Oriya, from Bhojpuri. But you ask me if I speak any of those languages, I'll say no.
Of course.
I know songs from Marathi that I got.
Same here.
So the thing is that we actually, even as people in our minds, we do not really think of languages as distinct categories. We might think of them as distinct categories when we are trying to talk about them, but when we experience language, our languages mesh into each other all the time, and we are completely fine with that. So I think theoretically, for us to try and say that this is different and this is different and these two must be in conflict, does not really reflect the human experience.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. I also would like to know, I know you said maybe a few of them did maintain diaries, did maintain a list that might have been passed on. But overall, how is it really passed on? Is it completely oral tradition? But what about how is this community so well connected to pass the language down?
The community is very intimately connected because when your minorities together, you form a tight-knit community. The hijra pratha in itself, the hijra gharanas, form a very tight-knit system. So the language actually emerges from there. It has spread to the Kotis eventually, right? So the language is usually passed on in this way that people, let's say a young Koti has a Koti friend. Or they've met somebody, they're alone, and then they meet some people and they say, hey, I think you're a Koti. Are you a Koti? And they'll be like, yeah, I think so, yeah, maybe. And then you're like, why don't you meet us? Why don't you meet our friends? Because everybody needs community. And then when you start spending time with the community, you learn their language. One word at a time, very organically. Sometimes you're taught, the fun words first, and then the serious words. But that's how you assimilate into the community. The more time you spend with the community, the more Ulti you speak. And Ulti then becomes a symbol of the assimilatedness, or how assimilated you are into the community, how much of an authority you carry in the community. That one signifier of that is your fluency in Ulti.
Okay, I have a proper structural question for you. So in Bangla we know there is no gender, right? And by gender, let me give you a little bit of background to it. By gender, when we say gender, it's the grammatical gender. So in Hindi, like if you say karta hai, karti hai, you can understand from the word itself that the speaker is a male, masculine gender or feminine gender. In Bangla, we don't have that. Quite like English, in fact. So and even in pronouns, I think, right? Even in pronouns, we don't have genders. So even like unlike English, where you can have this he and she, we don't have that in Bangla. So what about Ulti? Does it follow that same kind of a structural pattern? And I ask you this because of the obviously the non-normative gender identities that are there. So how does that reflect in the language?
So Ulti, by and large, follows the grammatical patterns of Bangla. The way a noun behaves in Bangla, a noun in Ulti behaves in the same way. The way a verb behaves, linguists will know what I'm talking about here. A verb in Ulti will behave in the same way, and so on and so forth, right? So essentially, if I were to explain it very, very technically, if I have a Bangla sentence and I replace the Bangla word with an Ulti word of the same type, then I will get an Ulti sentence, right? So if I say the house is bad, the house is bad, in Bangla I will say a barita khara. So I replace it. I will not use the Ulti words, but instead of house, we use the word for house in Ulti. Instead of bad, we use the word for bad in Ulti, and then we say the house is bad in Ulti. That's how it goes. But the thing is that people who have not been allowed the space and the vocabulary to say I am a woman, to people around them, to themselves even in Bangla, they have developed an Ulti system where so there is this one word which I do not want to name, and there is a specific reason I don't want to name it, because I don't want it to become a tool of ridicule for
and in any case, it's a secret language.
It's a secret language. Yes. So let's assume the word is K. Right. And the word is actually a word for a feminine relationship in the Bangla language. Right. So we are saying we are adding this K to any noun or verb or even adjective in Ulti to say specifically to a noun, to say how do I say it?
So in this case, it would be the house K is bad.
The house K is bad, yes.
Right. Or would you also say the house K is bad K?
No, that would be a little. You could use K 2-3 times in a sentence. But
it's okay, but this is essentially
the essential idea is that we can use the word K to attach it to any pronoun or noun in Ulti, and it works in a very funny way because you're not even using it. It is a feminine marker. But
that's
we are not using it to...
Like, does it make the house feminine?
No, it does not make the house feminine at all.
Yeah, so what is happening there?
In fact, you can attach it to the word for a man. And even the man does not become feminine.
Okay.
What it does is that it indicates that you are a person who identifies as a feminine person. Or perhaps that you identify with the hijra-koti community. So many kotis will not come and say I am feminine. They might say I am gay. It's a spectrum of identities. You identify from kind of effeminate to a hijra and everything in between. So a person from the community might not say I'm a koti necessarily. They might not use the words for it. But when you use this K, you are saying that I am in fact part of the community. I'm a speaker of the community's language. And that is what really it's a revolutionary thing if you think about it, because no language, as far as we know, develops a gender marker and then does not even employ it in the grammar. It's a symbolic marker, and the only reason that it is used, because if you study the structural aspect of it, it actually complicates the language a little bit. But instead of, we know that languages try to be as simple as possible structurally. It's called the Occam's razor. Languages, a brain tries to process languages in the most uncomplicated fashion ever. What happens with Ulti is that They have said, no, we'll complicate the language a little bit. That's okay. We just want to be able to express ourselves. So one of the people I've interviewed, she put it very beautifully. She said, actually, we want to be women. The world doesn't let us be women. So we have decided to use our language to feminize the world around us.
Nice.
So you can say things like house K, you can say table K, you can say woman K, you can say man K, you can say air K, water K. All sorts of possibilities are possible. The same thing you can't even do in Bangla. If you have to feminize something, let's say you use the word for aunt in Bangla, you will only use it with human feminine nouns.
Exactly. We will not be able to use it with anything. I can't say the house aunt.
You can't say the house aunt in Bangla. Ulti has modified the role of the aunt or the K to actually apply to a whole host of nouns. Because, when you're talking, you don't really go around announcing your gender. As opposed to what's happening in English right now, where you say this is my name and these are my pronouns, that kind of announcement does not organically happen in a language. So you improvise different tools to indicate your gender, and that is one way of doing it.
And also very, very subtly asserted as well. Like there's a certain sense of assertion.
Completely. Also the agency, right? The power that I get to speak my gender. In English, again, the entire conversation around pronouns is also a conversation around misgendering. Why are you misgendering me? Because you have gender only in the third person pronoun. So you cannot misgender yourself. You cannot misgender me when we are talking directly. But you can misgender me as a third person. So I can say he or she to somebody who does not identify as whatever that pronoun is. And then that's a problem. And then the conversation is, why would you disrespect me essentially behind my back? In Ulti, you're like, no, you can't, because I am telling you what my gender is. So it's taking back the agency to talk about something, taking back the power of the word to your own hands, to your own voice. That is quite radical.
And even as a linguist, I find this so fascinating because while this is still not grammatical gender, but it is still a grammatical marker which has a gender.
I'm calling it a symbolic gender marker.
It's a symbolic gender marker. It's so interesting.
So you mentioned Hindi, right? You mentioned how the noun in Hindi is the gender of the noun is reflected on the verb. Right? So we call it agreement. So वो खाना बनाता है, वो खाना बनाती है. So from the banata or the banati, we figure out that the wo, whether the wo is a masculine or a feminine, right? We don't have that kind of agreement in Bangla either. So the addition of a K in the noun does not actually help us, does not actually interfere with the grammar of Bangla. The verb in Bangla is not agreeing with the...
Exactly, which is why I said it's not grammatical gender. It is still not grammatical gender, but it is nonetheless a gender marker.
So it is not even semantic gender.
Exactly.
Kinship terms have semantic gender. So if we say chacha, chachi, things like that,
that's what.
It's not even that, because the thing you're combining with, you're not assigning the gender of K to that noun. Table does not become feminine if you put K there.
So I also want you to talk a little, because I remember you telling me about this, because you talked about kinship and how the language has structured around this kinship relations that they have formed. Could you please say that again for whoever is listening to us, because I found that extremely fascinating.
So I will be mentioning here, as I have mentioned before, that the lexicon of this secret language, I have to say this, the lexicon is actually not identical to the secret languages that are spoken in the rest of the subcontinent, but we see a very clear connection that all of these varieties are related. So you have some similar words, some words that have changed a little bit, some different words, right? But it's still, I call it bare Ulti, just the lexicon of Ulti. So we treat it like a different sort of entity compared to the rest of the language. Um, so the lexicon of Bear Ulti does not have vocabulary. Uh, it has vocabulary